"Don't look now," Carter Vale murmured, lifting his wineglass. "But your boss looks like he's about to murder the room." Clara Whitmore did not turn around. She already felt Dante Moretti behind her. The cold pressure of him, the silence bending the air, the cigar ember glowing in the shadows beyond the velvet column. 10 feet away, beneath a chandelier dripping gold over white tablecloths and red wine, the most feared man in Manhattan watched his heavy-set assistant sit across from another man in the restaurant he owned, wearing a red dress that made half the room stare and the other half pretend not to. Clara's soft, full figure did not disappear tonight. She had spent too many years shrinking behind black blazers, calendar folders, and polite smiles while men in expensive suits treated her like furniture with a headset. Tonight, the red dress said something she had never dared say out loud. "I am not invisible." But Carter's smile was too smooth, too rehearsed. His hand rested near hers, close enough to look intimate from across the room, not close enough to be honest. "You must be flattered," he said softly. "Women in your position don't usually get invited to tables like this." A waiter passing behind Clara hesitated just long enough to hear it. At the bar, 2 men in dark suits exchanged a glance. Clara's throat tightened, but her spine stayed straight. She folded her hands in her lap, feeling the heavy silk of the red dress against her knees, feeling every eye measure what Carter had just made public. Her body, her job, her place. Then Carter leaned closer, lowering his voice into something almost tender. "I imagine Mr. Moretti keeps you very busy. Private rooms, harbor dinners, vendor schedules. A man like that must trust you with everything." The words should have sounded like interest. Instead, they landed like a key sliding into the wrong lock. Clara looked at the white reservation card beside his plate. Carter had asked for table 12. No outsider asked for table 12. It had a clean view of the North Service corridor, the private elevator, and Dante's black door at the back of the restaurant. Across the room, Dante moved for the first time. Not much, just 2 fingers closing around the cigar until ash broke silently over the marble ledge. His bodyguards, Luca and Enzo, shifted half a step forward, then stopped when he raised one hand. No one at La Nate disobeyed that hand. Carter smiled wider, mistaking Dante's stillness for jealousy he could use. "Relax, Clara," he said. "I only want to know what kind of man makes a woman like you work so late. A woman like you." The insult was wrapped in velvet, but Clara heard the blade. She did not flinch. She lifted her wineglass, let the deep red catch the chandelier light, and saw Dante's reflection in it. Black shirt, dark eyes, jaw locked hard enough to crack stone. He looked furious, but not only jealous. For the first time that night, Dante Moretti seemed to realize that the man touching the edge of Clara's world was not trying to steal his woman. He was trying to open his empire. Clara set the glass down without drinking. Carter's gaze flicked, too quickly, to Dante's private door. And that was when Clara noticed the second reservation card tucked under Carter's napkin, printed with a name that had been removed from Dante's calendar 3 hours ago. The second reservation card sat half-hidden beneath Carter's napkin like a blade under silk, and Clara kept her face perfectly still. Across the dining room, Dante Moretti's cigar had gone motionless between his fingers. His bodyguards no longer watched Carter. They watched her. That was the part that made Clara's pulse slow instead of race. Men like Dante trained rooms to fear the loudest threat, but Clara had survived by studying the quiet ones. The waiter who stopped breathing near a private door, the hostess who avoided table 12, the venture capitalist who knew a canceled name from Dante's calendar. Carter was still smiling, still performing desire, still waiting for the heavy-set assistant to blush and spill something valuable. Clara gave him nothing. She set her wineglass down exactly where it had been, aligning the stem with the edge of her untouched bread plate, the small habit of a woman who had spent years making chaos look organized. At Moretti Hospitality, no one praised Clara for that. They praised the men who walked into meetings late and called it strategy. They praised the thin women at the front desk for being polished. Clara was praised only when she disappeared smoothly enough to make powerful men feel self-sufficient. She remembered every preferred whiskey, every shellfish allergy, every mistress hidden under a fake vendor name, every room that needed to be emptied before Dante arrived. Yet when she crossed the executive floor, junior brokers still slid their chairs in as if her body were an inconvenience instead of presence. "Clara, sweetheart," one of them had once laughed, "you're built for loyalty, not ambition." She had smiled then, because rent was due, because dignity sometimes meant not handing cruel people the satisfaction of seeing the wound bleed. But tonight, in the red dress she had bought with 3 months of careful savings, Clara felt that old sentence press against her ribs and fail to bend her. Carter tapped the table lightly. "You're very quiet." "I'm listening," Clara said. 2 words, calm enough that his smile twitched. Listening had always been her dangerous gift. Earlier that week, she had heard Dante's legal counsel mention the Romano account being scrubbed from the North Dock dinner. She had seen Dante cancel the private room under the name Elias Rook, then watched that same name disappear from the internal calendar before lunch. No assistant was supposed to notice the ghost of a meeting once men decided it had never existed. Clara noticed anyway. She noticed the reservation card now. Elias Rook. Printed, not handwritten. Placed under Carter's napkin like a mistake meant to be found too late. A waiter approached with a silver tray, but his eyes jumped to Carter first, not to Clara, not to the table number, not to the service order. Wrong. Clara's hand moved before she could talk herself out of it. She adjusted the red fabric at her knee, letting her purse slide gently against the table leg. The small motion knocked her employee badge halfway out of its hidden pocket, the black Moretti crest flashing for 1 second beneath the chandelier. The waiter froze. Carter's fingers tightened on his glass, and from the shadows, Dante's voice finally cut through the room, low and absolute. "Bring Miss Whitmore to the private office." "I can walk," Clara said before Luca's hand ever reached her elbow. The bodyguard stopped, not because she was loud, but because Dante Moretti looked at him once from across the room, and the man's fingers fell away as if burned. Clara rose from the white table in her red dress, large and steady beneath the chandelier, feeling the dining room split open around her. Carter stayed seated, his smile polished thin, but his eyes followed the black Moretti crest half visible inside her purse. Every whisper behind the velvet ropes turned sharp. They thought she was being punished. That was always the first assumption when a woman like Clara was summoned by a man like Dante. She had overstepped, embarrassed herself, misunderstood her place. She walked anyway, her heels quiet on the marble, her soft shoulders squared, the second reservation card still burning in her mind. Dante did not touch her. He simply turned, and the entire restaurant made room. The private office behind Lanate's black door was colder than the dining room, lined with dark walnut, smoked glass, and velvet chairs no one sat in without permission. A security monitor glowed on one wall, showing silent angles of the restaurant. Carter at table 12, the north service corridor, the bar, the elevator reserved for men who never used the front entrance. 2 bodyguards took positions by the locked door. Dante placed a cigar in a crystal tray, but did not put it out. Smoke curled upward between them like a warning. Clara stood in the center of the room, not behind a desk, not near the door, refusing to look like someone waiting to be dismissed. Dante watched the red dress before he watched her face, and for one dangerous second Clara thought he was seeing only what every other man saw. Body, softness, availability, a woman who should be grateful for being noticed. Then his gaze lifted, and it was worse. He was seeing the parts she had hidden too well. "Why didn't you drink?" he asked. "No acquiescence, no comfort, just a blade laid flat on marble." Clara looked at the monitor, at Carter's reflection, lifting his phone under the table. "Because he watched the service door before he watched me." Dante's jaw tightened. "And the badge?" The waiter saw it and froze. Her voice stayed even. "Not because I work for you. Because Carter was waiting to see whether he would." For the first time, one of Dante's men shifted like the floor had moved. Dante did not praise her. He did not apologize. He turned to the monitor, replayed the footage, and stopped it on the frame where Carter's napkin lifted just enough to show the second reservation card beneath it. Elias Rook. The name looked small on the screen. The silence it created was not. Dante's cigar burned untouched in a tray. "You know that name?" he said. Clara swallowed once. "I know who removed it." Before Dante could answer, the office phone flashed red. Enzo listened, then looked at Clara as if the room had just found its scapegoat. "Carter Vale is telling the floor she tried to sell him your North Dock schedule." Dante slowly turned from the screen to Clara, and beyond the locked door, the restaurant began to murmur her name. The restaurant was already judging Clara before Dante opened the black door. Her name moved through La Nate and low, hungry pieces, passed between diamond bracelets, black suits, and waiters pretending not to listen. Carter Vale stood at table 12 with one hand pressed to his chest like an injured gentleman, and the other holding Clara's employee badge between two fingers. The red dress that had made her visible now made her easier to accuse. People looked at the silk, then at her body, then at Dante behind her, and decided the story before anyone spoke. Carter's voice carried just enough to sound wounded. "I invited Miss Whitmore here because I thought she was lonely," he said. "I didn't realize she was trying to sell me access." The room tightened. Clara felt the words hit harder than a slap because they used every old wound correctly. Lonely, assistant, too grateful, too eager to be wanted. A woman near the bar gave a soft laugh into her champagne. "In that dress?" she whispered. Of course she thought he'd pay attention. Carter looked at Clara with polished pity. "You should have asked for a raise instead of playing spy, sweetheart." Dante did not move. That was the most frightening part. He stood beside Clara like a blade still inside its sheath, black shirt immaculate, cigar smoke clinging faintly to his sleeve, eyes fixed not on Carter's performance, but on Clara's face. Luca and Enzo shifted near the exits, stopping anyone from leaving. Yet Dante gave no order to defend her. Not yet. The silence forced everyone to keep exposing themselves. Carter placed the second reservation card on the table, face up. "Elias Rook." "She slid this toward me," he said, then flashed her badge when I hesitated. "I assume that means Mr. Moretti's assistant has more ambition than loyalty." A few men at the bar smiled. One of Dante's junior managers looked away, already calculating how quickly he could erase Clara from the payroll. Heat rose behind Clara's eyes, but she did not let it spill. She would not give them tears to use as confession. She stepped forward, soft and substantial in the red silk, refusing to shrink from the room that wanted her small. "That badge was in my purse," she said. Her voice was low, but the marble carried it. "If he has it, someone took it after I left the table." Carter's smile sharpened. "Careful. Desperation makes women say ugly things." Clara looked at the card. Not at Carter. Not at the laughing woman. The printed letters were too clean, the paper too thick, the lower corner cut with a tiny silver notch used only by the executive reservation printer behind Dante's private office. Hostess cards were cream. This one was pearl white. Clara knew because she ordered them every quarter, signed the vendor invoice, and once spent 40 minutes arguing about the wrong shade under fluorescent office lights while 3 men called it meaningless. Her pulse steadied. Carter had not brought the card from outside. Someone inside La Nate had printed it after the name disappeared from Dante's calendar. Carter lifted his glass, satisfied with the damage. Maybe she thought a man like me was her chance. Dante's cigar ember finally died in the tray behind him. Clara's eyes moved past Carter, past the card, to the waiter by the north corridor, gripping a pearl-white stack against his black vest. One card was missing from the corner. The missing corner on the pearl-white stack told Clara more than Carter's entire performance. She did not run toward the waiter. She did not point wildly. She simply stepped away from Dante, away from the protection everyone assumed she was begging for, and placed herself between table 12 and the north corridor. Her red dress caught the chandelier light like a warning flag. The waiter froze with the stack pressed against his vest. "Don't move," Clara said. Not loud. Not pleading, just certain. Carter laughed once, quick and ugly. Now she's giving orders? A few people turned, eager for another humiliation, but Clara kept her eyes on the cards. Her hands trembled under the weight of the room's judgment, yet she did not hide them. Courage was not the absence of shaking. It was refusing to step back while shaking. "Those are executive reservation cards," she said. "Pearl white, silver-notched, printed only from the back office." Carter's smile did not fall, but it thinned. "Fascinating. So the assistant knows stationery." "The assistant orders it," Clara replied. "The assistant signs the vendor invoices." The assistant rejected the first shipment because the shade was wrong. The room lost its appetite for laughter by inches. Dante had not moved, but the air around him changed. His dead cigar sat behind him in the crystal tray, forgotten. Carter lifted Clara's badge higher. "And yet your badge was at my table." Clara turned then, slow enough to let everyone see she was not cornered. "Yes," she said, "because I let it fall." A visible ripple moved through the room. Carter's eyes sharpened. "You expect anyone to believe that?" "No," Clara said. "I expect the printer log to believe it." Dante's head tilted a fraction. Clara looked at the waiter again. "The executive printer records badge access by timestamp. If that card was printed after I left the table and before Mr. Vale stood up, then someone used my badge while I was inside the private office." The waiter's knuckles whitened around the stack. Carter's voice hardened beneath the polish. "Careful, Clara." That was the first honest thing he had said all night. Dante's gaze slid to Carter, and every bodyguard in the room shifted their hands away from their jackets, waiting. Clara did not wait for them. She reached the waiter in 3 steady steps, her presence filling the narrow path he had hoped to slip through. He was taller than she was, but he backed into the velvet rope as if her calm had weight. "Set the cards on the table," she said. The waiter looked to Carter. Wrong again. The room saw it this time. Dante saw it. Carter saw them seeing it. Luca moved, but Clara lifted one hand, not to command him, only to stop the moment from becoming Dante's. "Please," she added, and somehow the courtesy made the order colder. The waiter placed the stack down. One pearl card had been torn from the corner, the tear matching the card Carter had used to accuse her. Clara picked up neither piece. She only bent enough to read the faint printer code at the bottom edge. 8:47 p.m. M. North Office. Her only bent enough to read the faint badge had been in Carter's hand at 8:47. Her throat tightened, but her voice held. "I was with Mr. Moretti then." Silence dropped hard enough to make the wine glasses seem fragile. Carter opened his mouth, but Dante spoke first, barely above a whisper. "Nobody leaves." Then his eyes found Clara, not soft, not loving, not safe yet, but truly focused, as if the red dress had stopped being a scandal and become evidence. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "come here. Show me exactly how they enter my office." Clara crossed the marble as if the entire restaurant were not waiting for her to stumble. The red silk brushed her knees, stained at the hem with one dark drop of wine from the table, but she did not touch it or hide it. Dante's order had opened a path for her, yet every step she took belonged to her. At the private office door, the bodyguards parted. Carter's smile remained, but it had lost its rhythm. Men like him understood charm, money, pressure. They did not understand a woman who had been underestimated so long that she had learned to make silence into a filing system. Dante followed her inside without speaking. This time, he left the dead cigar in the crystal tray outside. Clara noticed. So did Luca. So did the room. The office monitor still showed the security grid, all gray angles and cold blue timestamps. Dante stood beside the desk, not behind it, which was the first small fracture in his usual kingdom. "Show me," he said. Clara did not rush. She moved to the keyboard, her full presence steady in the narrow space between 2 armed men who had doubted her 10 minutes ago. "They didn't break into your office," she said. "They borrowed it." Enzo frowned. "That door never opened." "I know." Clara brought up the printer queue with 3 careful clicks. "Because the card wasn't printed from the office computer. It was printed through the executive reservation system, routed to the North Office printer under my badge access." Dante's eyes narrowed. Not at her. At the screen. Clara opened the access log. 8:47 p.m. M. Whitmore, Clara. Executive reservation print. North Office. Then she opened the camera angle from the corridor. At 8:46, The waiter Carter had watched slipped past the service alcove, carrying a stack of pearl-white cards and a black employee badge pressed flat against his tray. Clara's badge. He never needed the room, Clara said. Only the printer. Only my name. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Dante reached past her and froze the image. His hand stopped inches from her shoulder, close enough to warm the air, disciplined enough not to touch. Clara felt the restraint more sharply than contact. You let the badge fall, he said. It was not a question anymore. I let Carter think I was careless. And you let me think he was touching what was mine. The words came out low, dangerous, edged with jealousy he had not earned the right to use. Clara turned from the monitor and met him fully. I'm not what's yours, Mr. Moretti. The room went still. Luca looked at the floor. Enzo looked at the locked door. Dante looked only at Clara, and something in his face changed. Not softness, not surrender, but recognition cutting through possession. He saw the red dress then, not as bait, not as scandal, not as proof another man had noticed her, but as armor she had chosen before walking into a room built to erase women like her. No, Dante said at last. His voice was quieter than the smoke had been. You're not. Carter's voice rose beyond the door, insisting louder now, losing control. Clara turned back to the screen and pulled up the vendor list. One delivery route, one canceled dinner, one shell company tied to Romano Holdings, all crossing at the North Corridor tonight. She had not solved the whole trap, but she had shown Dante where it breathed. Dante picked up the office phone. Seal the north exit. Quietly. Then he looked at Clara again. From this moment, you stay where I can protect you. Clara's fingers tightened once on the edge of the desk. No, she said, calm enough to make even Dante Moretti listen. From this moment, I stay where you can hear me. Clara's answer did what shouting never could. It made Dante Moretti stop. The office held its breath around her, the monitors glowing blue over marble, the North Corridor sealed on one screen, Carter pacing on another like a man realizing the floor beneath him had teeth. Dante's hand remained on the phone, but his eyes stayed on Clara. Then speak, he said. No words. No surrender. Only a door opening one dangerous inch. Clara stepped beside him instead of behind him, close enough to read the vendor dashboard, far enough that every man in the room understood she had chosen the distance. The red dress brushed the edge of Dante's black suit sleeve, a flash of living color against all that controlled darkness. He noticed. He did not touch. If Carter wanted the north exit sealed, Clara said, then the north exit is not the target. Luca frowned. He ran for it. He performed running for it. Clara tapped the vendor list with one steady finger. The fake route I let Carter hear was the north service elevator at 9:15. If Silas Romano believed it, his people would be waiting there. But Carter accused me loudly enough to force Mr. Moretti to lock the corridor early. That means he needed everyone looking north. Dante leaned closer to the screen. Not over her. Beside her. The difference was small enough for the men to miss and sharp enough for Clara to feel. What is south? He asked. Tonight. Clara opened the private dining schedule. The charity wine auction. 3 senators, 2 shipping lawyers, 1 union broker, and every clean face you use when dirty money needs a handshake. Enzo swore under his breath. Dante's expression did not change, but the temperature of the room seemed to fall. Outside the locked door, Carter's voice rose again, smoother now, trying to regain the crowd. She's manipulating him, he called. Look at her. She knows exactly what kind of weakness he has. Clara's shoulders tightened, not because the words were new, because they were close to a fear she had never said aloud, that even if Dante defended her, the room would decide she had earned protection by being useful, not worthy. Dante moved one step toward the door. Clara caught the motion. Don't, she said. The bodyguards looked at her as if she had just put a hand on a loaded gun. Dante turned slowly. You're giving me orders now? No, Clara said. I am stopping you from becoming Carter's distraction. For one long second, his stare could have cut glass. Then Dante gave the smallest nod. Trust, but not softness. Protection, but not possession. Luca, South Auction Room. No guns visible. Enzo, pull the camera on the loading bay. He looked back at Clara. You stay with me. I stay with the evidence, she corrected. His mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Something more dangerous, because it was real. Clara turned back to the screen before either of them could name it. The loading bay camera flickered, then went black. A second later, the reservation system refreshed by itself. Under private event notes, a new line appeared where no staff member should have been able to type. Romano confirmation received. South door open. Romano confirmation received. South door open. The word sat on the monitor like a loaded gun pointed at the cleanest room in Dante Moretti's empire. For 1 second, every man in the office looked toward the south hallway, as if violence itself had a direction. Clara did not. She looked at the timestamp. 9:14 p.m. Too early. Carter had been told 9:15. The fake route was moving 1 minute ahead of schedule, which meant someone wanted Dante to react before thinking. Don't send everyone south, Clara said. Enzo had already reached for his radio. Dante lifted one hand, stopping him mid-breath. Why? Clara stepped closer to the screen, red dress stark against the blue security light, her wide, steady body planted between panic and the door. Because that note isn't a confirmation. It's bait. Luca glanced at Dante, then at her, still struggling with the idea that the assistant everyone had dismissed was now slowing the most dangerous men in Manhattan. Clara enlarged the system log. The entry had not come from the south door keypad. It had come through the charity auctions catering vendor portal, the same vendor Carter's waiter had used to route the printer job under her badge. Romano doesn't need the south door open, she said. He needs you to believe it is. Dante's eyes cut to the vendor line. Where is the real opening? Clara pulled up the private dining seating chart. 3 senators, 2 shipping lawyers, 1 union broker, 47 donors, 12 staff, 1 wine steward added to the roster after the guest list had locked. Her stomach dropped, but her voice did not. The auction room. On the camera, the loading bay went black again, then returned for half a second. A silver wine crate crossing the frame, carried by a man with his face turned away. Carter's voice suddenly burst through the office intercom from the dining floor, smooth and wounded. Ask her why she knows all of this, Dante. Ask your loyal assistant how long she's been selling access. The accusation rolled into the restaurant like smoke. Outside, people began turning toward Clara's name again. She felt it, the old gravity of blame, the room wanting her to shrink, apologize, explain herself into smaller pieces. Instead, she lifted her chin. Patch me into the auction room speakers. Enzo stared. Absolutely not. Clara looked at Dante. Not pleading. Challenging. If your men rush in, Romano's plant disappears into donors and lawyers. If Carter keeps talking, I become the distraction. Let me use what they already think of me. Dante went still. No cigar in his hand. No smoke to hide behind. Just a man deciding whether trust was more dangerous than control. Do it, he said. The bodyguards obeyed her plan because Dante had chosen to hear her. Clara took the office phone, her fingers cold around the receiver. On the auction room camera, the silver crate reached the velvet-draped display table. Ladies and gentlemen, Clara said, her voice flowing through La Nate's speakers, calm enough to make every head turn. The wine steward beside Lot 23 is not on tonight's staff list. The man with the crate stopped. Carter stopped smiling. Dante watched Clara as the entire restaurant froze around the sound of her voice. She had not shouted. She had not run. She had stood in the middle of the machine built to erase her and made every powerful person inside it listen. Then Clara added, and if he opens that crate, Mr. Moretti loses more than a door. The wine steward's hand froze on the silver crate, and for the first time that night, the powerful people inside La Nate obeyed Clara Whitmore before they obeyed Dante Moretti. No one moved toward the exits. No one laughed at the red dress. In the auction room, a senator slowly lowered his paddle. A shipping lawyer stepped away from the velvet-draped display table. Luca entered through the south arch with 2 men in black suits. Not running, not shouting, just closing the space with the quiet certainty of a door being locked forever. The false wine steward looked toward Carter. That single glance condemned them both. Dante did not need to raise his voice. Open it, he said. Luca lifted the lid. Inside, beneath a layer of straw and 2 bottles of Merlot, sat 3 encrypted drives, a packet of forged dock permits, and a slim black access remote marked with the crest of Moretti Hospitality. Not a bomb. Worse, a weapon designed to make Dante look careless, corrupt in the wrong room, exposed in front of every clean face he used to keep his empire breathing. Carter's wounded gentleman mask finally cracked. "That could be anyone's," he said, but the words came too fast now, too thin. Clara still held the office phone. Her voice carried through the speakers again, steady and impossible to ignore. The crate entered through Romano's catering vendor portal at 8:52. The printer job framing me used the same portal at 8:47. The wine steward was added after the roster locked. And Mr. Vale requested table 12 because it watches the north corridor while keeping his back to the south auction room. Silence answered her. Not the cruel silence from earlier, full of judgment and hunger, but a different kind. The silence of people realizing they had laughed at the only woman in the building who had been right. The woman at the bar who had whispered about Clara's dress looked down at her champagne. The junior manager who had been ready to erase Clara from payroll went pale as Enzo took his phone. Carter tried one last smile. "Dante, surely you don't let your assistant run your house." Dante turned slowly. He looked at Carter, then at the room, then at Clara standing in red silk beneath the blue glow of the security monitors. No cigar hid his expression now. No smoke softened the fact that he had nearly mistaken jealousy for truth. "No," Dante said. "I'll let the only person in this house who saw the trap save it." Carter's face emptied. By midnight, his hospitality fund was frozen, his vendor contracts terminated, his investors escorted from private rooms across Manhattan. By morning, Silas Romano's shell companies would find every dock permit dead, every clean lawyer unavailable, every handshake poisoned by proof Clara had preserved before anyone believed her. Dante made no spectacle of blood. He destroyed access. He destroyed credibility. He destroyed the polished world Carter had used as a weapon, and he did it with the evidence Clara had forced them all to see. Then Dante walked into the dining room, not ahead of her this time, but beside her. The same chandelier burned above the same white tables. The same red dress moved through the same room. But the story had changed. No one looked at Clara as if she were lucky to be noticed. They looked at her as if she now controlled whether they were allowed to remain. At table 12, Dante pulled out the chair at his right hand. Not behind him, not near the wall. Beside him, on the table waited a leather folder stamped with the Moretti crest and a silver pen. "Effective tonight," he said, his voice low enough to make the room lean in. "Clara Whitmore has authority over every private room, every vendor gate, every executive access list, and every man who thinks her silence is permission." He placed the pen before her. "If she says no, the answer is no, even to me." Clara looked at the pen, then at Dante. She saw no possession in his face now, only trust, costly in public. She sat, red silk settling around her like a banner, and signed her name where men with thinner smiles and louder titles had failed to protect an empire. Across the room, Carter Vale stood stripped of charm, money, and entrance. Clara did not gloat. She only lifted her eyes to the room that had tried to make her small. Tonight, the red dress was no longer a plea to be seen. It was the color of the seat she had earned, the power she had claimed, and the one woman Dante Moretti trusted enough to let stop him.